Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the Bleav Network. And joining me to preview the Texans-Jaguars game is host of the Touchdown Jaguars podcast, Jags Insider Phil Barrera. And first of all, great to catch up with you, Phil. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely, Robert. I love collaborating, even when it's division rivals. Always love chopping it up with you guys. As you know, things are kind of in disarray right now, so I'm here to have a good time.
Yeah, I can imagine. I was going to ask you what's been the fallout of the Bills game, and how has Lawrence and Peterson and the organization responded to all this?
Yeah, the day after, Doug Peterson in a presser came out and said, he has the Shad Khan's full support. It's just not what the fan base wants to hear right now. Everyone's kind of ready to move on. And I think the issue is we're seeing a lot of repeat things from Doug Peterson's end of his run there in Philly. And, things a lot of Philly fans have talked about as far as his departure from there, even after winning that Super Bowl. So while obviously we didn't get a Super Bowl here in Jacksonville, the turnaround that Doug brought here can't be understated. He came into a situation coming off of obviously the Urban Meyer debacle. 2 straight winning seasons in Jacksonville is nothing to scoff at given the team's history, but everyone's kind of fed up in terms of the fan base, and there seems to be a lot of turmoil between the head coach and the quarterback, and it just doesn't seem like it's going to get better anytime soon, and honestly it may even get uglier.
I want to get to Peterson a little bit later, but the Belichick to Jacksonville stories are running rampant. I'm sure you're hearing about them there. Are you buying into it? And does the fan base want Belichick?
Shad Khan is a huge fan of Bill Belichick. He's talked about him very glowingly. And Shad Khan is a very hands-off owner, right? So part of the reason why Urban Meyer was in here, part of the reason Trent Baalke, I think, has been around so long, despite people also wanting him out based off his history in previous stops. So I think there could be something there. Me personally, as well as my co-host, James Johnson, not necessarily the biggest fans of that move. Obviously, what he did in New England cannot be understated, and you can never take that away. But when you look at the back half post-Brady and developing those players and also the draft, we want to see some sort of up-and-coming and youth movement here within the front office as well as the head coaching, as well as just the coaching staff in general. But I definitely think there could be smoke there because, once again, Shad Khan is a big, big fan of Bill Belichick. So I would definitely keep an eye on it.
What is the percentage of the blame? How do they focus the pie up between Peterson, Trevor Lawrence, Trent Baalke? How did the fan base look at that?
It's strange because the fan base will go back and forth on Trent Baalke. I mean, I'll say this after the draft and then after some of the free agent signings, people were back on the Baalke hype train, and then now obviously they're back down on him. And, you look at the last couple of draft classes and you're seeing players that are having absolutely zero impact on the field. I think a lot of people are now finally in unison and wanting this really just a clean sweep as far as the front office goes. I would say I think most of it is placed on Trent Baalke because, again, a lot of us have wanted him out for the longest time. I think a good chunk of it is on Doug Peterson because it just seems like there is some sort of rift between him and the quarterback. And, they just paid Trevor Lawrence all that money. Who is the owner going to pick? Shad Khan just wrote that man a really big check. The fan base still, I think, does believe in Trevor, but that is wavering a bit just because of the performances we've seen as of late. I mean, the stat, haven't won a game since last year, when it came to that collapse and that losing streak. And once again, you're just not seeing the progression, especially when you see these young quarterbacks and your quarterback right in our own division, lighting it up. So I do think most of it still is on Trent Baalke. I'd probably go probably 60, 25, 15, Baalke, Peterson, and then Trevor.
What are the specific things that they're not liking that Doug Peterson is doing?
The Press Taylor thing has been just an ongoing saga here and dating back to Philadelphia. I mean, for some reason, he just continues to go to bat for this guy. It started last season as far as Press Taylor calling plays and then carried over into the offseason as far as who is going to be calling plays and we never really got an answer. Now Press Taylor is on the sideline, and you look at the offense, Robert, and they're just anemic. You watch them on prime time in front of everybody. They have no sense of concept, no sense of anything that could throw a defense off. There's nothing going on here, and for whatever reason, Doug Peterson is just so set in this relationship with Press Taylor, and ultimately it's going to cost him another job. So that is definitely at the crux of everyone's frustration when it comes to Doug's tenure, especially over the last couple of years.
It feels like the Jags win at NRG in November was just yesterday, but since then they've lost 8 out of 9. Any idea, Phil, how the train got off the tracks?
Yeah, of course, the injury, really set them back. I mean, you're 8-3 at that another primetime game, against Cincinnati, looking good. Trevor goes down, plays through the injury for a few games. But at that point, they just never really got it back going. Now, the strange thing did happen because in the first 2.5 quarters, you could probably say, against Miami, they look great. They're up 17-7 at halftime. And then the Travis Etienne fumble happens and, proceed. And then right after that, you see the 80-yard Tyreek Hill touchdown. And from that moment, I don't know what happened, and I think this is just a testament to how poorly the team is coached right now. They have not recovered from that turnover and from that long touchdown. And from that point on, Miami took over the game and won. And then that carried over for the most part in the Cleveland game, which was an ugly game. I was there. It was rating pretty much for, I would say, 60 to 70% of the game, but still couldn't get anything going until a very long Brian Thomas Jr. catch, which resulted in a touchdown. But since that fumble and even preceding that, like I said, as far as the injury, something's been off. And again, you attribute that to, you can also bring in health, but everyone gets banged up. You look around the league, everyone is hurt. But, it certainly doesn't help with, Tyson Campbell being out. They just paid him big money. Foye Oluokun is going to miss extended time, and, more guys going down in the secondary. But once again, everyone's dealing with injuries. You can only really blame that so much, and that can only take you so far as excuses.
All right, let's dig a little bit into Trevor Lawrence, because I want to get somebody that's watching him on a everyday basis and what they're seeing. And I'm sure you've seen the stats showing him and Daniel Jones are pretty much identical. Here's the most recent sample from the past few days on social media with the numbers. And just so our viewers can see how close the numbers are, what's your feel on Lawrence? Is this fair?
Yeah, and I don't think it's fair. And this is one thing that I have learned, at least doing this for as long as you have. And, Robert, you've been in this way longer than I have, but you just don't have time to watch every single quarterback. I'm not sitting down and watching Daniel Jones film. I don't know what's going on there in New York. What I can tell you is that on Monday night, the offensive line accounted for 21 pressures, 8 of them from Cam Robinson, which is just a whole nother issue here in Jacksonville. This can all be traced back to Trent Baalke has never, and they've invested resources. They've invested free agency and they've invested resources in the draft, and they have not been able to put together a sustainable offensive line here in Jacksonville for Trevor Lawrence. Is he making mistakes that he probably shouldn't be making in year 4? Yes, absolutely. The overthrow to DeMar Hamlin should not be happening in year 4. But also that's his first turnover this year. Now he's definitely had the turnover bug. The statistics like you showed right there speak for themselves. But I don't know who is going to be successful behind what they've put together here as far as an offensive line. And you look at Doug Peterson again to bring up his success in Philadelphia. I mean, you got guys in the trenches on both sides. Obviously, we're talking about offensive line here, but at the point of attack, in terms of keeping them upright and keeping them safe, it just has not been here. And again, that goes back to Trent Baalke and his inability to put together a team and put together an offensive line that can help him out.
All right, before we get to some of the key matchups Sunday, I just want to remind our audience real quick, join us for our live Texans-Jags post-game show as soon as Sunday's game ends. We need your comments and questions. Of course, for this show and all our videos, definitely want your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Click the like button to support us. And if you haven't done so already, click to subscribe and get notifications on YouTube so you know when we upload our new content, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app as well, so you can listen to us while you're out and about. All right, Phil, let's move to the key matchups in this one. Is there any area or just either side of the ball? You can do this either side of the ball. Any area that Jacksonville can take advantage of with the Texans? I mean, you might have heard we're kind of having a little bit of offensive line crisis right now.
Yeah, see, that's the thing is, going into the Cleveland game, especially after their performance against Dallas, you're looking at the film and you're seeing the success that Dallas has. And in no way, I don't think Jacksonville's defense and Dallas's defense, I don't think those are two equals. However, when you just paid a guy like Josh Hines-Allen, who is still playing very well, I will say that. And then, you invest the number 1 overall pick in a Trayvon Walker, you bring in Arik Armstead, you expect them to have some sort of success against specifically Cleveland's offensive line after the poor performance they have against Dallas. And I think Arik Armstead and Foye Oluokun combined for a sack. But other than that, Deshaun Watson had quite a bit of time. Now, later on in the game, he reverted back to what we've seen of him more lately. However, they just haven't been able to get to the quarterback. So the Jaguars have this ability to make inefficiencies of other teams look pretty good, whether it be a quarterback, whether it be an offensive line, whether it be a depleted defense. For whatever reason, over the last few years, they've had this ability to make it seem like that their opponents, at least as far as some of their inefficiencies, look pretty dang good. So in theory, they should be able to scheme up something. However, Ryan Nielsen, who I was incredibly excited about, as well as my co-host, a lot of people were very excited about him coming in from Atlanta, and especially being able to put Trayvon Walker in spots where he would be a lot more successful. I mean, coming off a 10-sack season, him and Josh Hines-Allen were the top sack duo coming into this season, and we just haven't seen that. And it certainly doesn't help when you're seeing what Aiden Hutchinson is doing, and that conversation, those two are going to be tied together forever. Right. So it just seems as if when Trayvon Walker, as far as his strength, if that doesn't work in his favor, he seems to disappear. And while I would like to say that, yes, they could take advantage of some of those matchups and any type of inefficiencies that maybe you guys are seeing on your end, we just haven't seen it. Now, Buffalo is a bad example. Buffalo probably maybe has, the best offensive line in the league, top 3 possibly. But yeah, we just have not seen that here through the first few weeks of the season. And now with a couple of guys out here, at least as far as that injury report, I just don't, until we see it for ourselves, we just can't be counted on.
From the other side of the ball, what concerns you most about the Texans right now? Where is the Texans' biggest advantage? And right now, I should say, as you and I are speaking, Joe Mixon still week to week. I'm guessing he's not going to be back. There was no sign in the injury report today that, he's going to be back. Dameon Pierce will be helping out a little bit in the running game if he's going to make some difference as opposed to what Cam Akers was able to do last week. But again, that's an offensive line issue too. Where do you see the advantage that the Texans have?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it right there as far as health on the Jaguars side. I mentioned earlier, Foye Oluokun is going to be out. We have substantial injuries in the secondary. Jarian Jones, a rookie from this season who had been playing pretty well in Tyson Campbell's absence. He got hurt, so we'll see if he goes. Like I said, the secondary is just kind of running on fumes. They're not really able to get any sort of push. And, you're coming off of a game like Houston is where, you guys just, ran into the surprise that has been the Minnesota Vikings and, coming back home, got a division matchup. I imagine you guys are going to be pretty pissed off. So it just doesn't bode well for a team who, again, just seems like they are in crisis. It doesn't seem like anything is in lockstep. And as I mentioned, maybe on the cusp of getting worse before it gets better. So, all Houston really needs to do is put on that Buffalo tape. And once again, there doesn't seem to be any sense of unison on either side of the football. So I imagine that's something that the coaching staff in Houston as well, CJ Stroud and the offensive coordinator there are looking at, and they're ready to go. I mean, you follow up Josh Allen with CJ Stroud. It's not like you're getting a week off.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just seems like those two teams are running at different levels right now, the Bills and the Texans. Again, to me, I've watched the NFL for a long time, and the offensive line is the key to everything. And unless that stuff gets shored up, I don't see the Texans in the Bills class right now, but we'll see. What's the Jaguars formula, do you think, for winning this? Is there a formula for them winning this game?
I mean, you got to see some sort of creativity on offense. They're so predictable right now. And that's one thing you saw Buffalo exploit. You saw Cleveland exploit is just no sense of creativity, no type of vertical offense. They're incredibly predictable right now. Travis Etienne has been pretty much non-existent again since that fumble where he was basically about to walk into the end zone. We haven't really seen too much of him. I mean, the stats show something else, but hasn't really been too much of a presence. Tank Bigsby has been a little bit of a bright spot. I would like to see them maybe lean on him a little bit more. They are really missing Evan Ingram. And I think that really has shown by how much they have relied on the second round tight end, whose name is escaping me right now for some reason, but they've gone to him a lot. And he's clearly not that guy. And Evan Ingram, coming off, the second greatest tight end season in NFL history. They miss that guy big time. And Christian Kirk has also been a little bit of an absence. So I think what they have to do is focus maybe a little bit more with Tank Bigsby and find a way to get the ball to Brian Thomas Jr. more. We're seeing these rookie receivers being targeted around the league. And as far as his cohorts, when you're looking at, Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., like these are the guys that were in his class that are being targeted 12, 13, 14, 15 times a game. And when he's the only guy that seems to be getting you any sort of offense and any sort of success, go to him, and it seems simple on paper, but right now nothing else is working. So you got to do that. And, Trevor, I mean, right now the offense, I think I saw a stat earlier today, 40 total passing yards in the first quarter through 3 games. That's absurd. You got to get him going. Trevor, once he's able to make those quick decisions and get in rhythm early, that's when he gets really, really comfortable. You got to scheme it up and get him going. Otherwise, we'll see what we've seen for the last few weeks.
Yeah, I would think that this is going to be a blowout. This point spread right now, as you and I are speaking, is at 6.5. But this is a typical game with these teams is super tight. The Texans and Jags, no matter how bad one team is or the other team, it just seems like it always comes down to less than a touchdown. I mean, I don't know if you remember all these games over the years that in the rivalry, but as soon as you feel like, oh, something should happen, they always get into this. It's like they get in the mud every time these two teams go up against each other, and it's not always pretty. It's usually an ugly game. I remember last year, the game that they won in Houston, the game that Jacksonville won in Houston, there were penalties out of nowhere that was, really playing with a lot of the Texans fans' heads, but that helped make the game, I think, close and gave the Jags the game. But I don't know, Phil, it's just like, I would say, oh yeah, you got to take the Texans and the points. They're at home. They're going to be coming out mad, upset, but it just, I would assume, I mean, wouldn't you, that this is going to be another tight one?
Yeah, these division games are weird, especially in the AFC South. I mean, no matter what. I mean, listen, just last year, right? Jacksonville wins and they're in. They've dominated Tennessee over the last couple of years. I won't say dominated, but, they look very good against Tennessee, a team that's always been a thorn in their side. All they got to do is win, and Derrick Henry turns back the clock one more time for one classic Tennessee Titan beatdown of the Jaguars. And, you guys go on to win the division, have had a stranglehold on it ever since. So, yeah, you really cannot tell, no matter what is going on with these teams. The Jaguars also have this innate ability when everybody seems to be out on them when it comes to the fan base to put together a win that they're not supposed to get. Now, typically, like last year, it happened. It started when they went to London. So we're still a couple weeks away from the London games. They play, obviously, 2 in a row there, and they get Chicago and New England. So, again, that'll be an opportunity for them to kind of right the ship. They also play Indianapolis the week after they play Houston, and Indy has not won in Jacksonville in a long time. That will also be our throwback jersey game. So you'll see the old throwback unis that game. So they got a chance after Houston to kind of rattle off some wins, theoretically. But yeah, with these matchups, you just really can never tell, even in the days where, Jacksonville was still just trying to find its way. They would still find ways to kind of hang around. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Robert. Who knows when it comes to this matchup.
Yeah, going back to, we're talking about Belichick, and I don't feel like he's the answer at this point because, when Bill takes over, he typically wants to also be in charge of personnel, which was a mistake in New England. And really, they didn't do a lot of good things personnel-wise the last decade he was there. And that was my concern with when we got Caserio. It's like, well, he was in on that, and there are all these bad personnel moves, and he's the de facto guy, the guy that they said was in charge of personnel at that time. But we know it was kind of Bill. But I will say this, Phil, and, to give Jacksonville, to give your fan base some hope, it looked like a train wreck. It looked like a disaster here just, a year and a half ago, and you hired D'Amico, and it changes everything. Some of those Caserio picks did not look all that great. The ones that he picked up before D'Amico came, and then D'Amico threw his magic sauce on it, and all of a sudden some of those guys look a whole lot better. And your quarterback, we got a new quarterback, but you look up in Minnesota and what Kevin O'Connell's done with Sam Darnold, and that's what a coach can do. I mean, so I guess that's the hope. That's all I can tell the Jacksonville fan base is like, hey, this thing can turn around. It's just one guy. Sometimes it changes the whole organization and what it looks like.
Absolutely. And we've talked about this as well. As far as Shad Khan, this decision needs to be taken out of his hands, and he needs to put together some sort of committee, brain trust, whatever it may be. Bring in guys. We've thrown out names. We talked about Tony Boselli before we got started. Tony Boselli, Fred Taylor, those types of guys need to be brought in and help him with this decision, starting with the general manager. There are so many names. The episode coming out tomorrow for us, my co-host Jay did it solo. We're throwing out names as far as top 5 general manager picks that we would like to see here in Jacksonville. And then when you pair that with the right head coach, I'm right there with you. Like, I do not want Bill Belichick here. Maybe he has something left to offer another team, but not here in Jacksonville, based off what they need. We need a youth movement. They need to find that next big thing and pair that general manager with the head coach and fix this thing from the inside out, right down to the culture, right down to the bones, right down to the nuts and bolts. And Bill Belichick is not going to do that. So yeah, we've seen you guys do that with the turnaround. And, even though it's very frustrating watching the success of the Houston Texans, because we are big fans of D'Amico Ryans as well as CJ Stroud. And it's just unfortunate that you guys play in the division. But yeah, it's doable. But I really think that decision needs to be taken out of Shad Khan's hands, and he needs to put it in the hands of people that he can trust to help make that decision.
We talked about it off the top. You host the Touchdown Jaguars podcast. Tell people about it and how they can find you guys on social media as well.
Absolutely. Touchdown Jaguars podcast. We release one episode each and every single week. We're most active, of course, not only with our episodes that come out. You can find them on any podcast platform, but also on Twitter, TD Jaguars Pod, where we are constantly putting up stats and, of course, the injury reports and everything you need to get ready for the game. And then, of course, my personal handle, which you can see here on the screen, at Phil the Filipino, FILIPINO. But yeah, shout out to my co-host James as well, and the website also, touchdownjaguarspodcast.com.
Can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time in a crazy time in Jacksonville right now. And
we're getting ready for the storm, and it seems like the least of our worries is here's the hurricane.
I hope we can catch up later in the season as well. We'll talk to you again soon, man. Phil, thanks a bunch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Robert.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.